Wolfgang, thank you very much, and also thank you to you, Daphne and Susanne, for framing this very important topic. And even if, Wolfgang, you introduced me as a marketing guy, that is probably putting the focus on a wrong perspective, because I don't want to give you a marketing injection here. I would like to talk about one of the most serious topics of society, and therefore I think representing an industry which is a main source for that discussion we are in, I think we really have to act here, and we have to, following very consequently the strategy of circular economy. And I think we can all be very proud that especially this topic is now at the very top of the European agenda, and I think also globally. In Europe we have a huge chance again to occupy a topic which could put us worldwide, politically, but also from a perspective of economics, in one of the first places. Especially being here in Munich, all of those initiatives towards circular economy, I think, are very good. I think you have so many speakers today talking about that topic, and those initiatives coming from TUM, also together with Unternehmertum and all other parties coming together, so we could really make Munich one of the hotspots for circular economy in the future. Nearly 1 year ago, we as BMW introduced a concept car at the IAA here in Munich. That's a typical strategy. You take some ingredients, put them into a car designed for the future, and expecting some applause from society. But this time something totally else was happening. So this car was a circular economy car, actually. And we were looking very consequently into a future, not that long, not that far away, so around 20 years in the future, showing that very consequently built on the 4 principles of rethinking things, of reduce, of reuse and recycle, what's possible to keep the car as one of the main ingredients, of course, of economics and society in the loop, and not that regulators are taking away that car from us. And this car was the starting point of so many, of course, also critical discussions in media, in social media, in all other aspects that we said that we were not, of course we were surprised about that, but overall I think we were convinced that this is definitely a topic where the automotive industry has to put the focus on in the future. But I don't want to talk about a car. I will show you 1 or 2 pictures of that car later on, because this is not the place for as I said, for marketing narratives. It's a very serious strategy of BMW Group in the meantime, and I would like to take you on a little journey about that strategy. Yeah? So you are all experts in that topic, and you know how important it is to also following the thoughts of your consumers. And what we are seeing, of course, is that more and more people are thinking about conscious consumption, especially when they buy a car. There's more and more coming, especially from the European customers, one mantra, and that is less is more, and when less, then definitely with more quality, with more substance. People want to know where the ingredients of the car are coming from. People want to know what happens and what can I do as a consumer, as a driver of that car, to bring down emissions while driving, and then especially what happens to the ingredients of the car later on. Those questions are very dominant in the future, and even if we are seeing not really worldwide the same reaction so far, that will come, it's just a matter of time. So consumers are finding themselves in the middle still, of course, between rewarding themselves, that typical consumption thing, but to be at the same time consciousness and mindful about those things I was just describing. So brands, to a certain extent, also have to solve that contradiction. That's very clear. But we also see still, of course, some countries in the world where society still is not really wanting what society would really need. And that is, of course, also, I think, definitely one exercise of companies to, in a certain extent, educate the people that it can't go on, especially in automotive, to throw to the world hundreds of millions new car and not having sufficient answers on what will happen to those cars and with those cars in the future. So we definitely have to find an answer here. So we came up with one sentence, which is obviously not a sentence of BMW, but which is a very impactful sentence, because automotive especially was always following one strategy path: faster, higher, further, more performance, more comfort, heavier cars, and that was all following the leadership intention of being the best in the world. But if you want to be the best in the world, or amongst the best in the world, you also and additionally have to be the best for the world. And I think this is very important as a strategic narrative, as a strategic foundation. So also within automotive, as the car for many people worldwide being a self-rewarding product, not just a transportation piece, especially when you talk about premium brands and luxury brands. So you were always following the social climber habits, yeah. But in the meantime, many of those social climbers are also orienting themselves in the context of the social drivers of our world. So status is totally redefined in the meantime. As I said, not really in all countries, but this is a movement which is definitely going on, and brands have to redefine themselves towards that new understanding of status, towards that new understanding of conscious consumption. So BMW as a brand is built on principles, being part of a lifestyle of people, being part of luxury life to a certain extent, but also, of course, want to play a role in the context of leadership and of sportiness. And you see so many examples from partly startups, bigger companies following those principles, whether it's Tony's Chocolonely, the first slave-free chocolate, whether it's the reuse of materials, whether it's already circular products in certain industries. They are not there, but I think especially the sports shoe, the sneakers industry is one of the main cause of pollution and of waste in the world. So they definitely have to go into the way of circular economy here. Many examples, and all of those examples are very well perceived. So they are not pushing consumers out of the business. They are not pushing them and holding them back from buying those products. So they are invitations. People love it. So it's not any longer a contradiction of being a premium brand and of having the intention to sell some things, and at the same thing following and pushing circular economy. No, it's coming together. So sustainability is in the meantime a big reason why people would like to buy premium and luxury products. But now, again, a little bit more serious. So the category car is heavily under pressure, and that is absolutely right, because we can't continue of doing the business as we did it for the last 140, 150 years. At one point, it's absolutely foreseeable that regulators will stop our product if nothing is happening. So it's not just the reputational thing, it's also, as I just said, it's a social acceptance discussion going on here. But of course, there are also very solid questions. Is the car still needed? Is individual mobility still needed? Of course, we have all those movements also into shared mobility, which are good, but they are not heavily relevant for a lot of people. But the car is heavily under pressure, and that's for a good reason, actually. That's my main point here. New forms and new answers are coming, so everybody is talking about connectivity and digitalization. So by the way, digitalization can also play a role in finding some good answers on sustainability challenges. But the only way in putting your cars away from combustion engines into locally emission-free electric engines can't be the answer. So totally independent from the powertrain, you have to take your car as a product holistically and following the principles of rethink, reuse, that begins with reuse and recycle, because otherwise things won't change. There are many answers in the industry right now, many answers, but only a few, unluckily, are really pointing the way towards circularity, circular economy and sustainability. Many of those are still following capital market issues. For example, one answer is that nearly nobody any longer wants to be seen as a car manufacturer. So they are moving away from the category car. For example, there are strategies more and more coming where automotive players say, I'm a luxury product. I'm not a car. And that is, of course, an evasive movement, which is, of course, maybe driving your profit, but that's not the answer from our perspective. Another thing is the tech aspects. Yeah? Don't call me a car any longer, I'm a computer on wheels. And even if there are many very good and promising answers, that's probably also too one-dimensional. And the other thing, which was very popular 5-6 years ago, to putting the whole industry into a shared mobility industry, more and more is causing some reactions amongst the consumers where the people feel a little bit patronized, because if you can only use the car with 4 passengers, if the car can only go 80 kilometers in an hour, if it's only allowed to use it in restricted time, in restricted hours, so that is probably also not really pushing the main reason and benefit of the car of being a symbol, of course, of individuality and of freedom and of self-determination. So where are the answers? I think there is a space which is free. And BMW would like to take this as an invitation, because when others are leaving the space, we would like to stay, but not looking back, but looking into the future. And therefore we said it's definitely important to do the business for the next decades based on 3 principles. The one thing is finding still the right spot between tech and human. So high tech meets high touch, not losing, of course, the human benefit in the products. But the foundation of everything what you should do as an automotive player should be intelligent reduction, based not only on sustainability, but definitely based on a circular approach, very consequently. At the moment, it's only 30% approximately of secondary materials in cars, so you have to definitely go up with that number, 50-80%. That should be the objective for the next 20 years. But you have to totally rethink what you are doing with your car. And I show you some examples in a second. BMW has a brand core which is based on one of the best human emotions, Freude, joy, and we said that can't be enough. So our brand core for the future has to be a combination of Freude, of joy, and forever, because forever is keeping the things in the loop, not just following a cradle-to-grave approach, but definitely a cradle-to-cradle approach, and also to convince, of course, society and government that the car can stay with us also for the next 100 years if we do something fundamentally different. Here you have the 4 principles, which are now not a marketing strategy. This is the foundation of the BMW Group strategy. Somebody has to go into the lead here, and even if it takes another 100 years to make the car a fully circular product, somebody has to start here. And it will be a long and hard way. But Susanne, as you were describing it, so it starts with rethinking the product. So, and that is a mindset change, yeah? It's not only about new materials, it's not only about new technologies, it's about totally new processes, it's about totally new ideas, it's a shift in mindset. Also, by the way, together with suppliers, so looking into the whole value chain, of course, it doesn't end and it doesn't start with a product. Then a big ingredient, of course, is reducing things, doing more with less, taking things out of the product. The products are by far too heavy in the meantime. They are carrying so many things which are nice and which are a symbol for premium nowadays, but they are not really used. So without sacrificing anything, really thinking the product new, that's why we have identified that intelligent reduction principle so heavily in our strategy. So it's of course about materials, but it's also about digital factories. It's about greener factories, etc. And then the most important ingredients are the reuse ingredient and the recycle ingredient. So reuse, of course, starts with making the product, the life cycle of the product longer, actually. Of course, every industry want to hold the product life cycles, wanted to hold them very short. But in the future, I think that has to change. An enjoyable product experience can be very long, with the possibility of refurbishing your car, holding it fresh, by the way. And there you also have the connection to the digitalization, because with ex-factory service upgrades, you can hold the car fresh over 10 years. So it's still a kind of new product, and therefore you have so many options doing a car in another way from an engineering standpoint. For example, how you deal with the materials being used, yeah, to make them in a way that they are easily dismantleable at the end when you really come to the end of a real life cycle, etc., etc. And then the recycling aspects is, of course, yeah, as I said, using mono materials, using unmixed materials, purely segregated as purely segregated as possible, reservable connections, all those things, and of course, bringing up there, you have the number from 20-30% nowadays to 40% recycled parts, secondary first approach. You have a huge bunch of possibilities. I show you this car here, so it's still a car, it's a 4-meter car, so it's also, I think, very important that mobility and individual mobility, especially for the urban spaces, is not using too much space. So it's those cars, 4-meter cars, can carry 4 seats, can also carry 5 or 6 seats if you do it intelligently. Of course, fully electric. Maybe hydrogen cars as well, to not be too dependent on charging infrastructure. But what's important here, and what's really, I think, also interesting, you don't need paint any longer. So it's recycled steel, it's recycled aluminium, and when you heat those materials, you could also come to some different colors. But I think the optic of the car, the visuals of the car are not the most important aspect here. So it's recycled plastic. You can use recycled glass, you can use recycled rubber, etc., etc. So it's all about mono materials. And of course, a lot of parties, suppliers, interested people, communities were saying that's not possible today. Yes, today it's not possible, but theoretically it will be possible. And that is where it starts with the holistic rethinking approach. If nobody starts with it, a car never will be totally circular. And also in the interior, yes, you see first approaches amongst all manufacturers in going away from chrome, going away from leather. There are many, many alternatives, of course. But what is important here is not only the recyclability of the products that you're using, but as I said, how things are engineered, that at the very end of the life cycle they can be easily dismantled. I think that's one of the most important things. BMW has already a long journey in that context. So we came with the first fully electric car already 10 years ago. It never stops, and what is really important, the strategy is not only alone the electrification of the cars, so closing the cycles, going totally into renewable energy and going into a systems thinking, because that's what we need worldwide, by the way, because we are, of course, heavily exporting cars. It will not just be a European topic. That should be the journey. It goes in parallel, of course, with a huge journey and challenge of decarbonization. We talked about the drivetrains, but it's also, of course, electrification in production. It's about decarbonization in the energy production, especially together with energy suppliers. And of course, also, first of all, reducing the energy demand, reducing the water demand while you are producing your products. That's our targets, 40% overall, 20% in the supply chain, bring down CO2. In the production, you have the main possibilities in the future, but also in the use phase, there are still some options we can take, and we will go. And of course, at the very end, when a car is really several times being refurbished and fresh, there comes a time where you have to really build your competence in recycling cars. We are at the moment the operator of one of the biggest recycling platforms in the world. But if you take 10,000 cars, of course, we are producing 2 million cars annually right now. That's just a little start, of course. We have to scale those possibilities here. But it's fascinating, especially when you take the batteries of the cars in the future, how you can, of course, at the end then bring them back to the different ingredients, and also here drive recyclability and drive the secondary first approach. For me and for us, it's not ending with a circularity approach. And as I said, huge chances for Europe especially. It's the start for many other possibilities in the future. And I would like to end with 4 huge and promising questions. I had the chance to discuss those questions over the last month together with Neri Oxman, you probably know from the MIT context, with a former mediated meta group. And that was so inspiring, because think about those 4 questions I'm coming up with. So can the form and the behavior of the vehicle not only be computationally designed, but also interact intelligently with nature? Can the vehicle not only be sustainably produced, but also individually and collectively give back something to nature? Can the car not only be powered by renewable sources, but also generate clean energy? Why not? And last, can the car not only collect information to assist the driver and the passengers, but also supply the information to generate value for the community and to the environment. And I think those are definitely questions beyond sustainability and also beyond circular economy. Those have to be the questions for the automotive industry for the next 100 years, that's pretty clear. But BMW has decided to go down the road becoming the most sustainable car brand in the world. And that might be a contradiction to one of the most sportiest brands, very egoistic, partly forcing aggressive driving behaviors. We all know the downsides of those brands, but we definitely have to fundamentally change the strategy. But it's not taking away the benefit of the car from the people, but holding that, but putting it in a totally other perspective for the future. That's the strategy. And yeah, that's the end of my little content injection here. Thank you very much for listening.